I've been told by everybody up on this roof that they're all off the roof. I am on the roof of exposure 4. Got fire through the roof of the fire building in the entire rear section.
Now remember, given the payday, has he been accounted for? Okay.
610B. That was the Mayday. 610B.
I'm here. We got a fire. 1.5-story, single-family dwelling. Fire shown from the second floor. Give me a second alarm on this.
Coming up to the top floor. I got people hanging out the top floor windows with a baby.
Commercial building. A lot of fire, a lot of smoke. Go ahead and strike a third alarm on my orders on this.
Got people on the front fire escape here with windows vented below them. We need somebody up there.
Yeah, let them know we got a job. I'm pulling up now. Second alarm, I got a 1-story single-family frame. Heavy fire showing from the attic.
So we're using all hands. We got one line stretch, fire on the 4th floor, second line being stretched. Primary searches are underway.
Hey, welcome to Old School. I'm Chief Rick Lasky along with my buddy Chief John Salka, and we've been getting some great feedback. Thank you so much for the great feedback on this podcast. Like we've said a bunch of times, it's just John and I sitting talking. We've done it for almost 30 years, just sitting there talking, and we decided, you know what, we need to just record some of this and share, and that's all it is. No agenda, just us visiting with you. So, hey, John, and I know I asked you this before we went live, if we could take a few minutes and pay tribute to a good friend of both of ours, Assistant Chief. I'm sorry, so used to that from 12 years. Chief Tim Tittle from the Louisville, Texas Fire Department was one of my two assistant chiefs, like my number 2 chief. Daryl Brown was there, and Daryl was awesome. He's the chief of Grapevine, Texas. Daryl's a great dude, great boss. John Tim was the most loyal. You and I have talked about the importance of loyalty. He passed away well over 40 years dedicated to the fire service. He fought cancer for 6 years, back and forth to work, never smoked, athlete, worked out all the time. You've said it before, when they punch your ticket, that's it, man. And we lost him the other day, and I know you've met him a bunch of times. Great guy.
Great guy. Absolutely. And, we've all been through it. We all get a little bit older. I'm 62 years old now. My career in the FDNY is over. Did my 33 years there, and you moved on from Louisville. And the point being, we're at the stage in our lives where, it starts to happen a little bit more for whether it be tragically sudden or whether it be, obviously we know some older guys that were our mentors when they were in their 60s. We were in our 20s and 30s, and some of them are passing away now too. But my point being, it never gets easier, man. Whether it's a guy that you've known for 48 or 58 years that's 87 and passes, or it's with a guy like Tim. Tim was a young man, and didn't suddenly pass, but still, it's still sudden. Him being in the prime of his life, being the chief of the department in Louisville, and you being so close to him, having worked with him for over a dozen years, it's just not easy. It's just not easy, and it's gonna. I mean, what we're going to talk about today, is related. It's related to death. It's related to line of duty deaths and how we categorize them and how we count them and what the purpose of all that is. But when you pull them out, one at a time and look at the name, look at the name Ray Phillips. Ray Phillips just passed away, 2 years ago yesterday.
Right.
And boy, the time has flown right by. It seemed like yesterday. And every year another name and another face and another story and another career and another life over, and it just is it is tragic, and it's something that we unfortunately get used to. Listen, we're all on the same train. I've said this 100 times. We're all on the same train. It's just a matter of what station you get off at. And I hate to make light of it, but really, in the end, that's it.
Well, and you're exactly right, buddy. It's just. And I love the Toledo, Ohio Fire Department, another great fire department. And you and I have taught for them. I've done several classes for them. They do this thing on Twitter that they post several times a month. And it's as long as they're remembered, they'll never be forgotten kind of thing, as long as and they post either, a different member that they've lost over the years, and they talk about them. And it's a great post. If to our listeners, check it out. They do such a great job remembering those they've lost in Toledo.
And it's
Ohio.
so true. Every time you talk about Ray Phillips, every time you talk about Tim from now on, every time we talk about Brannigan in one of our classes, you know, they're in the room again.
Oh,
They're
exactly.
Tom Brennan, there he is, sitting right there, laughing, giggling, telling stories about, you know, crawling. And it's just that's the I don't want to call it a positive thing, but you never really do die if your friends and family and all the people you knew and worked with keep talking about you. You never really do die.
Exactly, and you know, all these years we still talk Andy Fredericks, we still talk Bobby Welch. You know, Bobby, you know, legendary with the pipes and drums, but a great firefighter officer. Bob posts stuff all the time. To remember, folks, you and I do that whole never forgetting means never forgetting. You know, and Tim, you know, Tim was just, I mean. What a great guy! What a great family man! What a great athlete! What a great guy! Great boss! You were there at my retirement ceremony where my boss let me make the announcement while I was a time bomb of tears up there. That Tim was the next chief in Louisville. Like I said, we worked together as partners for almost 12 years.
There were strong rumors for that. I'm sure it was well deserved and almost expected, but it sure still was nice that you got to say it.
It was just so cool. And like I said, John, I was blessed. You've talked about your partners at work. You know, having Daryl Brown as one of my other assistant chiefs for a long time after I was betrayed by another one that had no honor, no integrity. And then Terry McGrath. I mean, Terry's my co-host on Hump Day Hangouts. Terry is a cool dude. I used to say this all the time. You know, it's about Daryl and Tim. And then when Steve Bass, our buddy Steve Bass, stole Daryl from us to bring him over to Grapevine and, you know, subsequently as chief, I kept saying it. I said, people used to knock on my door all the time. Call the phone, HR directors, headhunters going, okay, what's it going to take to steal Tittle? What's it going to do to steal Brown? And then it was Terry McGrath. Terry's the other one that, you know, I tried to recruit for a couple places where I was helping to find a new chief. It's just a matter of time before somebody reaches down and snatches him. And there's a guy like Terry, who is very passionate about the job, and people confuse sometimes passion for maybe being angry about stuff. And it's not about us being angry, as being disappointed when people fail you, when maybe a system fails you. But great guys, and God bless you, Tim. I mean, you'll be with us forever, brother. For those out there, just Google or go to my Facebook or Twitter stuff. You can find all the information on Chief Tim Tittle, chief from Louisville, Texas. But what a great guy. But John, on that, because I already said Tim was one of those forward-thinking guys that was always trying to do things to improve his fire department and subsequently the rest of the fire service, especially in the Dallas metro area. But you and I have talked about this before. We're doing better. You created a Get Out Live, and remind me, because I think I get the numbers jumped. You finally got. I created Get Out. I created Saving Our Own because we weren't doing anything. It was after Joe Samick died. A couple other people that were taken from us in line doing. I'm like, we're not doing anything to train firefighters to save firefighters. And you said, screw it. I'm tired of this. The tipping point, right? Well, we have to do something. And you created a Get Out Live. And right. And that was after FDNY lost how many? We lost
11 guys in 23 months.
Wow.
Which was absolutely unfathomable. I was a captain at the time in 48 Engine, busy company, busy part of the Bronx. And I mean, 11 guys in 23 minutes, you do the math. You're talking about every 60 days putting a uniform on, going out and burying somebody. It was pretty tough. 1, 2, 3 at a time. And make a long story short, it just spurred me into saying, man, oh man, what are we doing? I started looking at them. It wasn't any kind of a scientific survey or study. I just looked at all the line of duty deaths, just our own, right within our own department. A lot of information was available. And I just said, man, what can we do? And there it was. Get out alive. You know, how to breach a wall, how to jump out a window head first onto a ladder and not fall, how to put a piece of rope in your pocket and make a belay, a bailout system out of it without the belts and the ropes and the carabiners and all that.
How about the room orientation drill, which I think that's one of your best. I brag on it. I love when you do the classroom, and I love even more when you do the practical with that.
One for last, because that by far is the one that I got the most comments on. But without blowing smoke up here, you know, the point was it was an answer. It was an attempt to try and help line of duty death, you know, reduction.
Well, but really quick, let me interrupt for a second. And it did. You and I, well, hang on to that statement for a second. You and I, remember we used to talk about this going, you know, you and I would get a phone call back when email started. I have a plaque and a statue here from 2 different departments that use stuff that you and I taught them to save one of their own firefighters' lives, and we started seeing documented saves from those programs we were teaching of firefighters saving firefighters. But yet, I remember you and I, God, how many times we're like, but the numbers aren't going down, and you and I've said before, this whole comparison when they say, well, that we'll talk about fires in a second, but Tom Brennan did a great editorial a long time ago when he was editor-in-chief of fire engineering. It was liars figure, figures lie. And it's like, you can make up whatever you want, try to justify it all you want, but you got to do your research. And I always called, like on a book, the back matter, where you flip it over, you always read the back side of a book. What's the back matter on the subject? What really happened? Because if PPE's better, if our air packs, our turnout gear, radios are better, thermal imaging is better. We've got heads-up displays now. We have thermal imagers and accountability systems, and we've got look at how far we've come from horses, even before horses, from steam engines and pulling stuff to where we're at today.
Yeah, look how far we've come from just riding the back step.
Oh yeah, exactly. But 2 different numbers I wanted to chat with you about, ask you about, that you and I've talked about, is number one. Let's jump backwards for a second. And I use this. I was in outside north of Seattle, Washington this weekend for my good buddies Paul Wagner and Greg Osborne for Region 3 of the Chiefs. And I did a couple programs. One of the things I brought up, John, is what you and I talked about, especially about, this whole, fires are down. And I said where a lot of fire chiefs lack is in their marketing ability. They teach it to police chiefs. Police chiefs know how to get up, man, they're polished. They've got people that take records about the people who take records. And you and I both love law enforcement. We love our brothers and sisters on the law enforcement side, but they train the chiefs on how to go sell their city councils on stuff. And fire chiefs, we do what for them. And then they stand up there and they go, well, we want more people. And a council member who did his homework or has a brother who's a firefighter says, well, according to these statistics here that I got from the XYZ website, fires are down in the United States, but you're asking for more firefighters? And then the chief comes back and says, well, where are the insurance policy? It's not important until you need us. And I know we do more EMS, but you said it before. They're saying numbers are down, John, because they're comparing them to what years?
You know what? That's so true. That's so true. Everybody says the numbers are down, the numbers are down, the numbers are down. And the numbers are down compared to that spike. In the late 60s, early 70s, when New York and Chicago and a lot of big urban cities around the United States, a lot of civil unrest and a lot of people burning things for insurance money and a lot of things that have been solved and fixed and been put on the shelf. So yeah, fires are down compared to them. If you read Andy Frederick's articles, Andy's dead almost 20 years now. Andy Frederick wrote some articles before he passed on 9/11 about how fires really aren't down. And he said, basically, in a nutshell, and if you want to go research it, you can. I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you what page or where to look for it. If you want to challenge me, go find it. He wrote that other than that spike, other than that big rise in fires over the course of that 5 or 8 years, he said, we are now, and this is now 20 years ago, I'm sure it applies to some degree to today. He said, we're now as busy as we've ever been. I just saw the numbers for the FDNY the other day. It's 1.2 million, 1.3 million runs. And that's fires and EMS. It's all of our runs. So everybody's busy right now, and to some degree what the chief said in that little story you just told is true. You know what? If we only get 2 fires a year here, don't we need enough guys to fight the fire? Do we have to have 2 fires a day to have enough guys to fight the fire? I mean, really, that's what I would say. If I was a fire chief talking to the city council, can you give me enough guys on Wednesday of next week, the 9th? Can you give me enough guys at 9 a.m. in the morning because we're going to have a job that day, right? I mean, if we knew when we were going to have the fire, I would do that. But exactly. We don't. Now, the volleys can just blow the horns again or resound the pages, and actually some more guys show up, and maybe next door shows up. But with the paid fire departments, you got 9 guys on duty in 3 stations. That's what you got. You got 9 guys. Now, I know they can call guys back in from 9 miles away. They can put their kids in the house real quick with the wife and get dressed and drive in, but it's not quite the same thing. Now, that's one point. The other point is that if you look at dollars and your executive fire officers and your city managers and all the technical people, which I am not, and I'm not knocking them. Thank God there's technical people because I don't want to do that. But if you look at the numbers of dollar loss to fires, and it was true 5 years ago and it's true today. You can just update the numbers with very few exceptions. If you go back 20 or 25 years from today, every year for 25 years, with maybe one exception, the dollars lost to fire in the United States every single year are greater than the dollars lost to every other type of natural disaster or calamity.
Add it up. Add it up, right?
Add it up. Hurricanes, floods, earthquakes, all that stuff added together. All of them. Tornadoes, twisters, you name it. Just keep naming it, right? All of those disasters don't add up to the dollars lost to fire. So even though fires are quote unquote down from that peak, which is already a fake number, right? Because it's only from that certain little peak. Even though fires are down, fires are still one of the most expensive occurrences in the United States, and it's not just money. Because anybody that's taken a class from you or I, when we start talking about firefighter survival and how many civilians die every year, and the number is 3,000. 3,000 civilians die every year in fires.
And John, I'm looking at the numbers right now, buddy, and I'm just pulling up from the U.S. Fire Administration. You know, we'll talk about them later. We're tracking fire deaths. Let's just talk 2008 through 2017, roughly 10 years, right? Let's just talk that. All right. I know we're in 2020, but this is what they have posted because it always takes a while. All right. And well, actually, in 10 years' time, only one time in 2012 did it dip below 3,000. It was 2855. The rest of the years, 3320, 3,000, 3,005, 3120, 32, 3,300, 3,390 lives. Okay.
And it's like it's not happening.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not happening. Now we're talking about clean cabs. Now we're talking about, cutting staffing and response times. And none of them, very few of the changes that I hear being talked about in lots of places, not everywhere, have nothing to do with saving civilians,
right?
With saving us,
right?
And us and keeping us from dying early or getting cancer or getting run over. And all those are legitimate things. And I'm not knocking anybody, National Fallen Firefighters or NFPA or U.S. Fire Administration or anybody else. Everybody's doing a great job trying to do the right thing. But I think somewhere along the line, and what about them? What about the folks that we all raised our hands and said, we are here to protect you. We are coming. We are coming. 3,000 die every year, and it's almost an invisible number. It's transparent. You could probably ask most fire chiefs or city managers how many people die.
John, I do it ever since you started doing that, and I ripped that off from you. You know that. And I always I give you credit. I ask people, I mean, room full of people, how many people die in this country due to fire every year? How many fire deaths? And I swear to God, I look out there and there's no, this is what you get this, 70,000.
Right. Or 200, 300.
And they're guessing. And when you say 3,000, I said, look, I know it wasn't on one day like 9/11, but Jesus, I mean, we're over 3,000 people are dying due to fire. Forget the injuries in this country. And there's some, look, and there's some great organizations.
And we, the fire service, and we have a collective conniption if the firefighter line of duty deaths go up by 10 or 15 or, God forbid, 20 from one year to the next. Holy cow, I think there's a giant crevice in the earth. This may be close to the end of Armageddon. It may be the end of the world. We went up by 30 from last year. 30? Really? And 3,000 civilians died and nobody even knows it. And those are our what? Ask Alan Brusini. Who are those 3,000 people?
Right.
Customers. Those are the people that we were created to serve, and we don't even know that number.
And right, and people will always come back to it. Well, all right, there's little 1.2-ish firefighters in the country, and there's a gazillion people, and the numbers kind of, and I'm like, yeah, but the reality is, before we start talking fires are down, let's brag about civilian deaths are down. And I was getting to John. There's some great organizations out there. You look at some of the sprinkler organizations that are pushing sprinklers in residences, which we should have. And there's some great people doing great initiatives, but some of the heavy hitters really aren't kind of backing us when it comes to that. So that's the one set of numbers we've talked about, civilian deaths and how much in the way of dollar loss. So therefore, our fire chiefs, you want to stand in front of your city council and have a councilor, God bless them, they're doing their job, say fires are down. Why? I say, well, you know what? Fires are down because you compare them to the heydays. But let me just show you some numbers, and let's talk about dollar loss. So let's do what we can to prevent this from happening, and so on and so forth, and blah, blah, blah.
And without showing them numbers, a fire chief could talk to the city council or the city manager and say, except for the period from 1969 to 1974, there's more fires and more death and calamity in the United States related to fires than ever in the history of the planet. So you can eliminate them, right? Just like they say that, with the exception of 9/11, when 343 firefighters died, only 85 firefighters have died on average every year for the past 20 years. They very quickly, with one sentence, just removed 9/11 from the picture, even though it was 343 firefighters, right? Why? Because it was a spike. Well, if you take the same concept and apply that to fires, with the exception of 69 to 74, fires are at their height in the United States right now. Take that little spike out, and we're as busy as we've ever been. And then, like you said, so more civilians die, more fires than ever, except for that spike. And look at the dollar loss as well. You tell me how you can even talk about fires being down if you put those three factors right in front of it.
Exactly. Exactly. So like I said earlier, John, we've got better apparatus, fire apparatus responding. We have better, turnout gear, protective clothing, SCBA's tools, training opportunities. We could do years on just that and on shows and still not run out of stuff to talk about. So let's flip that when we talk about firefighter line of duty deaths. Now, we've said before, both of us really we like, and I know I brag on him a lot. I don't even know if he likes me or not, to be honest, which really doesn't matter to me. But Bill Carey from Firefighter Nation and Fire Rescue, he manages those sites and that part of the magazine and stuff for Bobby. And
we love his saying, right? What's his saying?
Oh, I deal with data, not drama. And I use that all the time. Don't give me your drama.
Boy, oh boy, is that good.
Oh, don't give me your theories and your drama. Let's deal with what is reality. And he does a great job. To our listeners, follow him on Twitter. And I'm telling you, he'll post every day. He posts another one lost to this, another one lost to this, another one to this. And we talked at FDIC a few years ago because I really got tired. And I'm not saying it because I had to lose some weight. I'm saying we're all so quick to blame certain things, just like you said when it comes to people saying fires are down. So when you study, let's just talk about the firefighters lost due to heart attack and stress every year. And we will say it is a fact. Smoking is down, physical fitness is up. You do your surveys in the fire service. It really is. It's not what it was, John, when you and I started, or when my old man was a firefighter and everybody smoked and it was the cool thing to do. Look at the advertisements, and they're not gigantic, overly obese, all these, gigantic, more morbidly obese people. You look and go, okay, this guy was 38, this guy's 45, this guy's 52. And what's going on here? Now, we're doing better with physical exams, every year and all that stuff and so on and so forth. But I like what he does. He actually tracks. Remember a couple of years ago where he said 250 days into the year, not one line of duty inside a burning building yet. Yep. And he'll call.
Say those last words again. Where?
Oh, in a burning building. And
that's right.
And he'll say that, John. He'll say he actually kind of calls people out on it. He did the other day. He calls somebody, goes, lying, something like lying, not telling the truth, because somebody posted this big thing about, and he's like, and again, it goes back to you and I can make up whatever we want. And there's a bunch of people, that are friends of ours that, like we'd listen to our buds and all, but it's nice when somebody's willing to talk facts. They're willing to call out the people that make up this stuff out there and talk about what reality is when it comes to it. Now, numbers.
People know, as long as people know, detractors, folks that are on the opposite side of arguments, we should be able to disagree without being
yeah.
We used to have two sides of an argument and not be angry. I've sat on a couple of stages with folks talking about, victim profiling, and how little I think of it. You know what I'm saying? But the guy that invented it sat on the stage with me, and we shook hands, and we were friendly, and we were cordial, and he brought up his points, and I brought up mine, and we debated a few things, and it worked out just fine. And the same rules apply to this concept. The same rules apply to this issue of line of duty deaths. I think the bottom line is, and again, I just want to be clear that I think the work that a lot of organizations are doing to reduce line of duty deaths are wonderful and well-meaning and effective and positive and good and with no reservations. However, I still think the concept itself, in general, across the board, is overblown. I think it's overblown. I think it's made into a bigger thing. I think they make bigger announcements. I think they talk louder about it. I think there are bigger posters about it. And I tell guys in my classes, and you and I teach a lot of classes together, and I teach a lot of classes on my own, 5 ground responsibility, and just about every class touches upon safety and survival, right? And I always say, please stop worrying about everybody. Please stop worrying about how many firefighters died every year. And I don't mean it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter to you individually. You should be worrying about, if you're a lieutenant in the Louisville Fire Department, you should be worrying about the Louisville Fire Department. And more specifically, if you're a lieutenant in Ladder 2, that's who you should be worrying about. The firefighters that are riding on Ladder 2 with you in the A shift in Louisville Fire Department. When I was a captain of 48 engine, I should be worried about the 5 guys that are riding around with me in 48 engine on my shift. I shouldn't be worried about 75 engine down the block or the Detroit Fire Department in their vacant buildings. I mean, those are all great concepts, and we can all learn stuff from close calls and line of duty deaths. But don't worry about that. Most fire departments, which God will tell you, there's over 41,000 fire departments in the United States, right from who?
ISO.
That's right. Right from ISO, and those are the numbers, people, right? And guess what? When 50 or 60 firefighters died, that means tens of thousands of fire departments had no line of duty death last year, every single year.
And think of, you and I've talked about this before. If you look at NIFRS, the reporting system, if you will, for our activities, granted, there's a decent percentage of fire departments that do not participate because they don't either want to or they don't have people or whatever, but the majority do. And when you look at how many actual structure fires we respond to, and just forget, God bless our, same thing to we have our brothers and sisters from Canada that are listening, to us, to this podcast. But in the United States, if you add up, if you look at all the actual structure fires in 1 year's time, and again, I'm not trying to condone it, folks. We're not trying to condone firefighter deaths or injuries or say it's okay. We are with you. We want to fight this and we want to see people survive and live. But boy, oh boy, are we doing that bad?
Well, not that bad. Boy, aren't we doing good?
Well,
boy, aren't we doing good? More farmers, more loggers, more truck drivers die than firefighters every year. Put that to pipe and smoke it.
Exactly. So the whole point is we should never give up in our efforts to keep firefighters obviously alive and healthy and safe and keep the numbers down. But I think masking it sometimes, John, I think that's where you're going with this. Some of this masking it, what is, a line of duty death. And we want to be very careful because a good buddy of ours brought this up probably 20 years ago where we could get all the acronyms, all the LMLPs working together, different organizations coming up with different numbers for the same stuff. And it's like, wait a minute, why are there more line of duty deaths with this group listed than there is with this group? There's this group and so on and so forth.
I was set straight on that recently, with the NFPA and the U.S. Fire Administration, and people come out with, there's at least a couple of different numbers every year. And some of them count every single one line of duty, whether it's a hometown heroes line of duty death and some of them don't. Some of them just count, on actual duty line of duty. That's meaning responding, returning, actually at the scene and stuff like that. And right off the bat, that seems a little confusing to me. The fact that there's 2 separate numbers each year in the United States. You think we get our stuff together and say, here's what the number is, Now, and I'm not picking on anybody because and this is not an actual line of duty death, but I've read so many. And you read them in the magazines and you read them in a lot of places. There was a firefighter or an officer, and it doesn't matter who, and God bless him, and I hope they took care of his family. There was a firefighter that was on duty, in uniform, driving from headquarters to somewhere else with some paperwork, with a report that had to be submitted that day for a grant or for whatever it was. And he was killed in an automobile accident at an intersection. And that fire department made that a line of duty death. And that line of duty death got attributed to one of the organization's totals for the year.
Well,
I hope the family gets taken care of. The guy was on duty. He was pulling duty. He was doing work. He was out there because he was working. He wasn't on the way to an ice cream shop with his daughter off duty. However, don't you think we should make some differentiation between a guy crawling through a building or falling off a roof compared to a guy that even dies of job-related cancer, somewhere, or dies of something 36 hours after directing traffic at a fire somewhere? And I'm not minimizing anybody's contribution to the fire service, but I think somewhere along the line, like the military does, I think they should be differentiated between a killed in action
exactly
and a killed on duty.
And we're not talking about, reducing benefits to the families of those.
Absolutely
Not at all. We're not taught. You can still pay out what you pay out, but you can have active and you can have, like they do, combat related and non-combat related. So let's differentiate. And they do break the numbers down. Again, if you look at the pie chart, you can see what was training, what was traveling to, all the different things like that. They do have it broken down. And they do a pretty good job of it, but nobody pays attention to that, John. I should say very few people do. Bill Carey does, but they see the numbers. They go, like for years it was about 100. We're down a little bit now from that, but sometimes it ebbs and flows. And like 50, whatever. But we would say, oh, look at 90, 80 people. And I'm like, yeah, but 80 people, let's start looking at how many were training incidents, how many were in vehicle accidents, how many were in, inside buildings, how many were heart attack and stress, how many. And then you can make, I think, a little bit more valid argument when you're trying to justify things. But just to take one number, as you would say, tie it to a balloon and pop it out there.
Do you remember? There was a guy in the fire service that we both know one year that said, well, if you take out those 19 guys that died in that wildland fire, we didn't break 100 this year. Like everybody was making every excuse and every deduction and reduction to try and keep the number under 100 one year. And I'm like, really? Is it that important if it goes from 2 digits to 3 digits or not, or from 3 to 2, that we're trying to pull some out and say, well, if we make this one accidental rather than a line of duty, it just doesn't matter. Every line of duty is a tragedy. Every death of a firefighter, whether he was delivering plans for an inspection or whether he's crawling through an apartment dragging the victim out, they're all tragic. A lot of them have lessons to be learned. We should talk about all of them. But I don't like the grandstanding. I don't like the big total. And the number for 2019 is, and then we're all waiting for this number like it really matters. And it doesn't matter. It matters that you keep your department safe. You keep your battalion safe. You keep your crew safe if you're a lieutenant or a captain. And I think if guys and gals spent more time focusing on that, I think the national number probably would go down if we pay attention to the stuff that we actually have some control over. Some impact.
Well, and that's my point with, again, not to blow smoke up Bill Carey's ass, but if I tell people all the time, John, if you really want to see someone who tracks the whole, and more than that, he does a ton of things, but if you really want realistic numbers, realistic features, a realistic view, whatever you want to call it, let's talk realistic. The data, not drama. Follow Bill and watch what he's
brought that reality to line of duty deaths, like our friend brought to rapid intervention teams and Maydays with the Mayday project.
Oh, exactly. And again, you and I, to our listeners, oh my holy God, there's nothing more that John Salka and Rick Lasky we want to see is line of duty net numbers keep reducing. Now, one of your shipmates, Captain Patty Brown, legendary, tremendous amount of respect for him from both me and you and a gazillion people, have said for the longest time, he said it forever. He says, you could be the safest fire department in North America and it's still a dangerous job. There's things that happen. There's great bosses who have had things go wrong at fires and lost people. It doesn't mean every incident commander runs a fire, loses a firefighter is an asshole, an idiot, a dummy. That's not true. There are a few, but the majority are good, great bosses. Stuff happens. But again, John, I guess what I'm asking is, don't we need to pay attention to the why and the how instead of just the number?
Right.
I
wish they just eliminate the number. Say, well, numbers went down a little bit this year, so let's look at them. And like I said, study them. Those are the lessons that are most valuable. See what it is that's causing firefighters to die individually, one at a time, two at a time. Fires on the highway. We lost some great firefighters out on the highway.
Yeah. Oh God.
People at extrications and stuff like that. It's not just fires, obviously. So there's a lot of ways to get hurt and banged up in a job that we all do. And for every way there is to get banged up, there's a solution for it. There's a way to reduce it.
Well, and we've talked about that before. We'll talk about it again. You want to reduce your line of duty numbers in most instances, not all of them. Be a company officer and step up and do your damn job. Be a senior firefighter, take care of the younger firefighters around you. Be a chief and know that your people are your responsibility. You and I have said it. So many of the line of duty that occur outside the firehouse. We always ask. You and I look at each other. Where was the lieutenant on this one? Where was the captain on this one? There's great company officers, but do your damn job. We've said it before we close things out here. We spent thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on a seatbelt alerting detection system inside fire engines with red lights and buzzers and whistles and sensors and seats to tell you that your guys aren't putting their seatbelts on or didn't close a compartment door. What does that say about the leadership right in the front seat if you have to do that?
When a captain can just turn around instead and say, hey, put your seatbelts on and we're not going anywhere. Guess what? Click, click, click. They'll be on in a second. One statement. Save all that technology, all that wasted time and energy and money. You're right.
Well, let me ask you closing thoughts. We finish up here. I kind of just said something a little bit. What John Salka's thoughts? What do we do? What do we do to be better? And I didn't say to reduce the numbers any further. To be better at what we do in the fire service.
Listen, I can't tell you how many fire departments I've been to that don't have written procedures, that don't have a safety officer, that, officers aren't trained. Officers get promoted, elected, or selected. They just put them up in the front seat with a red helmet. All those things got to be done. It really is just follow the rules. Just train your people to know what they're doing. Just have good qualified officers riding up in the front seat that aren't afraid to say yes and say no when appropriate. These are all really simple rules. You don't need a degree. You don't need anything to know all that stuff. And some fire departments just are afraid to say it,
Oh, exactly. Well, hey, John, let's remind folks, you know what, tell your friends and neighbors, subscribe to Old School on iTunes. For those that don't have iTunes, I've been posting on my YouTube channel, for those that don't have, whatever the type of phone that you need and so on and so forth. There's a bunch. So you zip over to Chief Lasky at our YouTube channel that I post a lot of our stuff on, and make sure people know about this. If they need to get a hold of you, John, and I always, you rather people hit your website or shoot you an email? What's easier?
No, an email's good. Yeah, chiefsalka@gmail.com.
chiefsalka@gmail.com. I'm Chief Lasky @gmail.com, and we appreciate you joining us and listening in. We try to shoot for 25, 35 minutes with these. I think we went 35-ish, but it was a great topic, and spread the word. We end all our shows with a very important phrase to our brothers and sisters out there. That's, please keep the men and women serving armed forces in your thoughts and prayers right now. Please keep our law enforcement family in your thoughts. They're going through rough times again. And probably the most important thing is be safe and God bless you. Thanks for joining us again. We appreciate you.